She walked into the grand sitting room, a space designed not for quiet contemplation, but for the performance of power. In the center of the room, its polished black lacquer gleaming in the moonlight, stood a magnificent Bluthner grand piano. Its sonorous, resonant tone, renowned for its golden voice, was a world away from the harsh realities of Chongqing. It had once been the pride of the American consulate's ballroom in Nanjing. When the diplomats had evacuated ahead of the Japanese slaughter in 1937, they had abandoned the heavy European elegance of the legation for the speed of the river gunboats. This was her truest voice, her only honest battlefield. While her public life was a flawless performance of harmony, and her conversations were a study in diplomacy, the piano was her sanctuary. Here, in the dramatic, romantic, and fiercely nationalistic music of the West, she found a language for the revolutionary storm in her soul, a passionate individualism that had no place in the calculated hypocrisy of the capital. Jingliu's contacts had intercepted the instrument before the city fell. Using the He family's unparalleled access to the inland shipping lanes, they had spirited the 3/4-ton beast past the blockades and up the Yangtze gorges. It was a piece of salvaged grace, acquired not through impossible wartime transport, but through the quiet opportunities that arose from a collapsing world. Yet this private sanctuary was also her most effective public weapon. At the famous salons she hosted, the piano was the centerpiece of her strategy. She would play for her guests, her selections a brilliant demonstration in psychological diplomacy. For the German military advisors, she would perform a powerful, disciplined piece by Beethoven, a nod to their reverence for structure and cultural depth. For the American diplomats, she would choose a sophisticated, modern piece by Gershwin, speaking to their nation's vibrant, forward-looking energy. Her musical talent was not just a social grace. It was a form of high-level communication. It was a tool to build bridges, disarming her guests by demonstrating a mastery of their own culture that placed her on an equal footing with any Western ambassador's wife. This was the ultimate expression of her unique brand of power, a strategic fusion of Eastern grace and Western artistic mastery. Tonight, however, there was no audience. There was no strategy. There was only the storm. She sat, her posture perfect, her fingers finding their way to the cool ivory keys. She did not play a gentle sonata. She launched into a Chopin Polonaise, the music a powerful, defiant, and revolutionary storm that filled the empty room. The piece was a cry of Polish nationalism against Russian oppression, a story she understood in her very bones. She poured all her frustration, her rage at the Kuomintang's corruption, and her fear for her nation into the music. Her hands flew across the keyboard in a display of technical brilliance and seething, contained passion. The Polonaise's militant, defiant chords thundered from the magnificent German grand piano, each note a protest, each powerful crescendo a wave of fury breaking against the shores of her composure. The glint of light on the polished chrome of a minister's new American Buick, his face flushed with wine as he boasted of its smooth ride at a lavish banquet. A line from her husband's last letter, describing soldiers with festering wounds, dying not from bullets, but from simple infections for lack of sulfur drugs. The memory of General Yao in his comfortable rear echelon headquarters, playing mahjong with his cronies, while a map on the wall showed her husband's division bleeding for a victory that was being stolen from them in the corridors of power. The music climbed, growing more frantic, the notes a cascade of brilliant, desperate anger. Her contained passion was straining against its bonds, the elegant discipline of her training warring with the raw, chaotic grief in her heart. The piece reached its final, furious, triumphant chords. But instead of resolving the final note with the clean precision of a trained concert pianist, a control shattered. With a sharp, choked cry that was torn from her throat, she slammed the heels of her hands down onto the keyboard. A hideous, discordant crash of sound, a perversion of harmony, blasted through the elegant room, the strings of the German piano groaning in protest. The ugly, jarring noise hung in the air, a raw wound of sound that was the true, uncensored voice of her soul. She was left panting in the ringing silence, her fingers locked into a rigid, bloodless claw against the keys, her body trembling, the polished veneer of Madame Fan finally, irrevocably broken.